May 24, 1943. North Atlantic, west of Ireland. Inside U-223, the air is stale and heavy with diesel fumes, sweat, and fear. Captain Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Metz, a veteran submariner now commanding a boat once considered a hunter of empires, grips the chart table as the hull shudders. Somewhere above, propellers churn, fast, confident closing. Escort turning in, the hydrophone operator whispers. Multiple screws, at least 4. Metz says nothing. He doesn't need to. You can feel it now in the steel under your boots. The Atlantic has changed. Depth charges detonate in a pattern too precise to be random. The first explosion is distant. The second is closer. Paint flakes drift down like snow. Gauges tremble. Men brace themselves against bulkheads, counting seconds, waiting for the next impact. This is not how it used to be. Just 2 years earlier, German U-boats roamed these waters like wolves. Convoys were predictable. Escorts were thin. Radio discipline was sloppy. The sea itself felt permissive, vast, forgiving. Commanders like Otto Kretschmer, Silent Otto, had turned sinking ships into an art, attacking at night on the surface, slipping away before anyone knew what had happened. But Kretschmer is gone now, captured in 1941. And the men who followed him are inheriting a different ocean. A runner squeezes through the narrow passageway, clutching a damp folder recovered days earlier from wreckage. Floating debris scooped from the sea after a shattered Allied freighter went down under another boat's torpedo. Inside are fragments, convoy identifiers, routing codes, escort annotations. Not the prize they once would have been, but enough to study. Metz spreads the papers across the table, red shaded lights flickering as the boat lurches again. The routes are there. The times are there. But something is wrong. The escorts listed are heavier than expected. Destroyers paired with corvettes. New symbols appear, air cover windows extending farther into the Atlantic than any land-based aircraft should reach. Escort carriers. Continuous protection. Metz feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cold sea outside. Above them, another depth charge explodes. This one is close enough to knock a man off his feet. In earlier years, convoy data like this would have been gold. With it, a skilled commander could position his boat perfectly, slip into the convoy's path, fire, vanish. Losses were expected but manageable. The arithmetic favored the hunter. Now the numbers don't add up. Metz traces a finger along the route lines. Every convoy is bracketed, covered, shadowed. Even when Allied ships zigzag, the pattern suggests anticipation, as if the escorts already know where attacks will come from. He looks up at his first officer. They're waiting for us, Metz says quietly. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. Across the U-boat arm, reports have been circulating since March. Boats disappearing in clusters. Entire patrol lines wiped out in days. Commanders sending brief, clipped signals before going silent. Veteran crews gone without a trace. May alone has been catastrophic. New Allied technologies are converging. Centimeter wave radar that can spot a periscope HF/DF Huff-Duff, stations triangulating U-boat radio transmissions within minutes, improved sonar, better trained escorts, and most devastating of all, aircraft that now reach the once safe mid-Atlantic gap. The sea has eyes everywhere. Metz remembers the old briefings, the confident tone from headquarters. Admiral Karl Dönitz had promised that improvements, new torpedoes, new tactics would restore the balance. That losses were temporary. That the enemy would break first. But here in the cramped belly of U-223, surrounded by steel and depth charges, that faith feels thin. Another blast. Closer still. The chief engineer shouts damage reports. Minor flooding. Valves holding for now. Metz gathers the papers, stuffing them back into the folder as if the act might somehow undo what they reveal. Convoy data no longer equals vulnerability. Information no longer guarantees advantage. The enemy has sealed the cracks. For the first time, Metz allows himself to think the unthinkable. What if the Atlantic is already lost? Not tactically. Not in a single battle. But structurally, systemically. What if the Allies have built a machine too dense, too adaptive, too well protected to be broken by submarines alone? The hydrophone operator looks up again. Escorts widening the search pattern, he says. They're not guessing. Metz closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the screws above, steady and relentless. In the darkness, the realization settles not as panic but as cold clarity. This is no longer a war of hunters and prey. It is a war of attrition Germany cannot afford. And somewhere far from this steel coffin, Admiral Dönitz will soon come to the same conclusion. June 3, 1943. Caroman submarine base Lorient occupied France. Rain streaks down the massive concrete pens, turning the harbor into a gray mirror. Inside one of the briefing rooms carved into the bunker complex, Captain Lieutenant Karl Dönitz stands among other returning commanders, uniforms rumpled, faces drawn tight with exhaustion. These men are not green. They are survivors, and that alone now sets them apart. A staff officer pins fresh charts to the wall. Red markers. Too many of them. Each one represents a U-boat that failed to return from patrol. Boats lost in the Bay of Biscay. Boats lost mid-Atlantic. Boats lost within sight of home. The pattern is unmistakable and it is accelerating. Metz recognizes some of the hull numbers. Friends. Mentors. Men who had learned their trade under Otto Kretschmer, who had believed, as he once did, that skill and nerve could still overcome Allied material advantage. A murmur spreads through the room as lost figures are read aloud. 41 U-boats destroyed in May alone. The room goes quiet. A year ago, such losses would have been catastrophic. Now they are becoming routine. The intelligence officer begins his presentation, laying captured Allied material on the table, maps recovered from wreckage, fragments of convoy instructions, summaries derived from intercepted traffic. Metz leans forward as familiar symbols appear. These are the same kinds of documents U-boat crews once prized. But the conclusions are different now. Convoys no longer travel exposed. Escort density has doubled in key sectors. Long-range aircraft patrols overlap deliberately, leaving no gaps. Escort carriers reposition dynamically, responding to radio bearings faster than U-boats can relocate. The officer points to a graph charting detection versus survival rates. Once a U-boat is detected, the probability of escape has collapsed. Metz feels a tightening in his chest. This matches what he felt at sea, not fear but inevitability. The escorts are no longer reacting. They are hunting with expectation. Another officer speaks next, communications intelligence. Allied radio discipline has improved drastically. Messages are shorter. Encryption more frequent. Even when traffic is intercepted, it arrives too late to matter. And worse still, every German transmission risks instant triangulation by HF/DF stations scattered across Britain, Canada, and Iceland. The sea listens now. Metz recalls how often he had been ordered to shadow convoys, reporting position updates back to command. It was once standard practice. Necessary. Now it feels like a death sentence. A senior commander finally voices what hangs in the... These losses cannot continue. No one contradicts him. Outside, another U-boat slips into the harbor, scarred and leaking oil. Dock workers rush forward. There is no ceremony. No cheering. Just urgency. The base has become a hospital ward, triaging machines and men faster than replacements can arrive. Metz submits his patrol report later that afternoon. He chooses his words carefully, measured, factual, impossible to dismiss as pessimism. Enemy convoy defenses exhibit complete depth coverage. Air escort persistent beyond expected range. Radio interception likely immediate. Success probability declining sharply. He pauses, then adds one final line. Current tactics unsustainable. He knows how that sounds. He knows what it implies. That evening in the officers' mess, the talk is subdued. There is no bravado left. Younger commanders listen more than they speak. Veterans compare notes quietly, realizing that each has reached the same conclusion independently. This is not bad luck. This is system failure. For the first time since the war began, U-boat commanders are not asking how to win, but whether winning remains possible at all. And far above them, in Berlin, Admiral Karl Dönitz studies the same numbers. He sees what his commanders are seeing, even if he is not yet ready to say it aloud. The Atlantic has become hostile water. And the realization, once unthinkable, is now unavoidable. July 8, 1943. Bay of Biscay. The sky is a hard, merciless blue as U-459, a German supply submarine, wallows on the surface, forced up by mechanical trouble, her crew working feverishly to repair a balky diesel. Captain Lieutenant Georg von Wilamowitz Moellendorff scans the horizon through binoculars, every instinct screaming urgency. Once, surfacing here would have been routine. Dangerous, yes, but manageable. Now it feels suicidal. A distant speck appears to the west, growing rapidly. Not a ship. An aircraft. Aircraft starboard quarter, someone shouts. There is no time to dive. The shape resolves into a B-24 Liberator, sunlight glinting off its wings as it bears down with terrifying confidence. The bomber does not hesitate. It does not circle. It does not search. It attacks. Depth charges tumble from its belly, exploding around the submarine in a curtain of white water and steel. The first blast lifts U-459 bodily out of the sea. The second caves in the pressure hull. Men are thrown from their feet. Screams echo through compartments already flooding. Within minutes the submarine is finished. For Allied aircrews this is no longer exceptional. It is procedure. Long-range patrol aircraft now blanket the Bay of Biscay, the mid-Atlantic, even waters once thought unreachable. They are guided by radar, by intelligence, by radio bearings that pinpoint U-boat transmissions within minutes of detection. Submarines cannot surface safely to recharge batteries. They cannot outrun aircraft. They cannot hide. The ocean has become a killing ground. Reports flood back to U-boat command. Boats destroyed by aircraft before reaching patrol zones. Boats sunk while returning home. Boats lost without ever seeing a convoy. The attrition is relentless. Inside U-264, Captain Lieutenant Otto Skalls pores over intercepted Allied traffic, fragments of convoy reports, escort dispositions, anti-submarine doctrine notes captured from wreckage. What he reads confirms his worst fears. The Allies are no longer reacting to U-boats. They are anticipating them. Convoy routes shift dynamically, protected by overlapping layers of escorts and air cover. Escort groups train exclusively for submarine hunting, operating independently of convoys once contact is made. New weapons, Hedgehog mortars, improved depth charge patterns, coordinated sonar tactics, turn each detection into a probable kill. Skalls closes the folder slowly. The data is clear. Brutal. Inescapable. Even perfect execution now leads only to survival, not victory. At headquarters, Dönitz faces the same evidence. Charts of sinkings are replaced by charts of losses. For the first time, the balance is reversed decisively. U-boat production cannot keep pace with destruction. Training pipelines shorten. Crews go to sea with fewer patrols behind them, fewer mentors to learn from. And still the losses continue. In late July, Dönitz orders a temporary withdrawal of U-boats from the North Atlantic. It is an extraordinary admission, though couched in operational language. The wolf packs disperse, not to reposition but to survive. For men like Metz, the order confirms what they already know. The Atlantic, once vast and forgiving, is now saturated with enemy power. Every transmission risks death. Every surface run invites attack. The very tactics that once defined U-boat warfare have become liabilities. One commander writes privately in his diary, "We are hunted everywhere, there is no darkness left." The realization settles across the force, quiet and irreversible. This is no longer a battle waiting to be won by a single breakthrough or new weapon. It is a system tilted too far, too completely against them. The ocean itself has changed sides. And in that realization lies the end of Germany's last hope of strangling Britain into submission. August 30th, 1943. Berlin. The room is quiet except for the soft scrape of paper and the distant hum of traffic beyond thick curtains. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz sits at his desk, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes fixed on a stack of reports that no longer need interpretation. He has spent his career believing, knowing that submarines were Germany's decisive weapon. That given enough time, enough pressure, the Atlantic would break the Allies as surely as it nearly had in 1942. Now the numbers stare back at him merciless. Boat after boat. Crew after crew. Gone. Dönitz runs a finger down a column of dates. May. June. July. Each month worse than the last. The tempo of losses is no longer fluctuating, it is compounding. For every Allied ship sunk, multiple U-boats are destroyed. The exchange rate has inverted completely. He reaches for a report forwarded from Lorient, written by one of Otto Kretschmer's successors, a commander who had once idolized the ace. The language is restrained, professional, but the meaning is devastating. Enemy convoy systems exhibit comprehensive protection. Surprise is no longer achievable. Our losses exceed strategic tolerance. Dönitz sets the paper down slowly. He remembers Kretschmer's confidence, the early war briefings filled with optimism, the belief that skill, courage, and aggressive doctrine could offset material inferiority. For a time it had been true. The Allies had been careless. The ocean had been open. But the enemy had learned. They learned faster. They coordinated better. They turned industry, intelligence, air power, and technology into a seamless system that left no gaps wide enough for submarines to exploit. Dönitz stands and walks to the window, looking out over Berlin. He knows what this means, not just tactically but strategically. Without control of the Atlantic, Germany cannot cut Britain's lifeline. Without that, the Reich will face the full weight of American industry, landing on European shores. The realization is no longer confined to submariners at sea. It has reached the highest levels. In a meeting days later, Dönitz speaks with unusual candor. The enemy has gained the upper hand in anti-submarine warfare, he admits. We must accept this. It is not a surrender, but it is close. U-boats will continue to fight. New designs will be tested. New technologies pursued. But the era of dominance is over. The decisive phase has passed, unnoticed at first, then undeniable. Out in the Atlantic, Captain Lieutenant Karl Dönitz receives orders assigning him to training duties ashore. His boat survived, but many did not. As he watches young crews prepare for patrols, he sees the same determination he once carried, and feels an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest. He knows what awaits them. The convoy data he once studied, hoping to find weakness, now serves only to confirm strength. The enemy does not need secrecy anymore. Their protection is overt, layered, constant. The Atlantic is lost not because German sailors lacked courage, but because the war has moved beyond individual brilliance. It has become a contest of systems, and Germany's system is failing. Years later, Dönitz will write of this moment with stark clarity. The turning point was not a single battle or invention, but the convergence of many. Air cover without gaps, secure communications, coordinated escorts, relentless production. The ocean did not suddenly reject the U-boats. It closed around them slowly, methodically, until there was nowhere left to hide.